What is up, scientists? And today we are going to explore the physical properties of matter and how we can compare and contrast them. Now, before we get started with our investigation, let's look at some of our essential questions that we are trying to answer within our matter lessons. Now, let's talk about our essential question. Remember, essential questions in science and in different lessons can help us think about what we already know about a topic, and it helps us connect to new ideas that we're going to learn today to help us produce a new thought about the topic. Our essential questions will be focused on our different science topics. So look for keywords. In those keywords, the minute you see them and recognize them, I want you to think, what do I already know about this topic? Once you have that in your mind, you want to look at the question again to see what we're trying to answer today or what are we trying to answer about that topic. It's important to remember that an essential question is like a goal as well. By the end of our science lesson, you should confidently be able to answer the essential question. Let's go over our essential question for today. Let's look at our essential questions for today. I'll read first and then you'll read it with me the second time. Listen, how can we measure, test, and record different properties of matter? Read that one with me. How can we measure, test, and record different properties of matter? Let's go to the second one. Listen first. What are the differences between solids, liquids, and gases? Say that one with me. What are the differences between solids, liquids, and gases? And our last essential question, what physical properties tell us if an object is a solid, a liquid, or a gas? Say that one with me. What physical properties tell us if an object is a solid, a liquid, or a gas? We are going to be working in our lesson today to answer these essential questions. We're going to get a better idea of how we can classify something as a solid, liquid, or gas, and we're going to focus on different properties. Now, you've used some different properties in the past while exploring in other subjects. Today, we're going to review those properties and we'll do some practice with them of our own. We talked about in our essential question the word properties. Different properties are different words and ways to describe different types of objects. Now, if we're going to classify different properties of solids, liquid, and gases, we need to review some of those properties today. Let's review one together first, and then you guys will get a chance to get your hands on some items and review it as a class. We are going to do a little float versus sink activity. I am going to show you different items, and we are going to make a prediction on if we think the item will float or sink in my bowl of water. After we make predictions for all of the items, we'll go back and we'll test each item out in the actual bowl. As we test each item out, we will check off if our predictions were correct, or we'll put a little X next to it if our predictions were wrong. We'll make this little T-chart over here. Remember, T-charts are lines that look like lowercase t's, and at the top we have two categories. This helps us compare two things. Today, we're obviously comparing if things can float or sink. Let's take a look at what items we're going to use. Our first item that we'll test today is a paper clip. Let's make a guess. Do you think that this paper clip will float or sink? If you think the paper clip is going to float, stand up. If you think the paper clip is going to sink, sit down. After your class has voted, write how many students think it will float and how many students will think it will sit on your T-chart on your class board. Just make one as a class right now. I am going to leave my paper clip to the side and we'll test it out in a minute. Let's look at some of our other items. We're also going to test a ping pong ball. If you think the ping pong ball is going to float, you're going to stand up. If you think the ping pong ball is going to sink, you're going to stay seated. Vote as a class and then write how many students think it's going to float and how many students think it's going to sink. Another item we'll do today is a house key. If you have a house key, or your parents might have a house key to get into your houses, or maybe your cars, you might have a key too. This one is made out of metal. It's kind of hard to see, but this one's made out of metal. I want you guys to stand if you think the key will float and sit if you think the key will sink. Write your votes on the board. There are 2 more items we are going to test out. We're also going to test out a crayon. This is a fresh crayon out the box, a blue crayon. Vote as a class. Do you think the blue crayon will float or sink? And the last item we're going to test is going to be an apple. Do you think our apple will float or sink? Same thing. If you think the apple will float, stand up. If you think the apple will sink, stay seated. Now let's test out our different items to see if they float or sink. You're going to need to help me count down. We're going to start with our paper clip. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Ooh, I'll zoom in for us a little bit here. Our paper clip sunk to the bottom. So our paper clip did not float. Under sink, I'm going to write paper clip. If you voted for paper clip for sink, good job. Give yourself a high five for making a good prediction. If you voted float for paper clip, why do you think this paper clip did not float? If I look at this paper clip, I can see that it's blue. It's a different color than some normal paper clips. It's got a little bit of extra paint or material on top. I think that extra material is adding weight to our paper clip and sinking it down to the bottom. It's making it a little less buoyant. Let's test out our next item. The next item we have is a ping pong ball. Let's count down from 3, everybody. In 3, 2, 1. Our ping pong ball floats in the water. I'm going to write ping pong ball under our float sign. It's our first item that floated. When I think about a ping pong ball and I can tap it so you can hear, there's nothing inside the ping pong ball. It's full of air. It makes sense why it floats on top of the water because it's being held up by all the air inside of it. Let's go to our next item, a house key. Let's count down from 3 until we drop it in. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Ooh, that one sunk to the bottom quick. So on this side, we have a key sunk to the bottom. The metal key sunk right to the bottom. It definitely has too much weight in it for it to float to the top. Let's go to our next one. We talked about dropping a crayon in. Let's see if our crayon floats or sinks. Ready? Count down from 3. 3, 2, 1. Our crayon floats. Look, I can even push it down and it will come right back up to the top of our bowl. So our crayon is going to go in our float category. All of these different items, we're able to say that they float or they sink, and we're describing a little bit about them too. If I look at the crayon, or if I think about what the crayon's made out of, the wax that crayons are made out of, the wax is not a heavy material. It's actually quite buoyant. So if we place the crayon or even throw it in here, it floats back up because it is a little bit more buoyant and is able to sit on top of the water. The last thing we're going to test on this video together is an apple. What do you think will happen to the apple when we put it into the water? What was your original guess? Would you change your guess now? Let's see what happens when we put the apple in the water. As you can see, as the apple moves from side to side, the apple is floating in the water. When I see floating apples in the water, I always think of the fall activity that some people used to do where they would bob for apples or tape apples out of the bins. Apples have a more buoyant level, and that allows them to sink a little, or that allows them to float a little bit better. In our T-chart right here, we looked at the difference between some of our items, and you guys made some predictions before we checked them. Now that we tested all our items and we actually saw which items floated and which items sank to the bottom, and we confirmed it in our T chart, we tested a little bit more about the density of each item. If items were more dense, they're going to float to the bottom. The metal key or the paper clip had different paintings and extra material on it that made it more dense and dragged it down to the bottom. The ping pong ball is full of air. There's nothing in it, making it less dense or able to float on top of the water. You guys are going to continue to do a mini exploration today. You'll also look at the article, Why Do Bubbles Float? As you explore these different things, you're going to make your own observations. When you make those observations, I want you to think about why those things are happening. Just like we did. We kind of talked about why did the paper clip sink? And we looked at the paper clip closely to look at had extra paint material on it and the little metal pieces underneath. Same with the ping pong ball. We tapped the ping pong ball and we were able to hear there was nothing inside of it. Those are different observations that can help lead us to our conclusions about why those items float or sink. Being able to describe that is being able to describe the properties of those items. And once we're able to do that, we might even be able to categorize these items into different classifications.